Hey y'all, on today's episode, we have former NFL player Jason Starkey again with us, as well as Adams Pritchard and Chad Lyncher. We have a conversation around recovery, what has impacted us the most in our lives, some really powerful experiences, so tune in, it's a good one. Welcome to Impacting Recovery Uncensored. I'm your host, Sarah Pritchard. This is a podcast where we dive deep into the real, uncensored truths about addiction, recovery, and everything in between. No sugarcoating, no judgment, just honest conversations that can help lift up the solution. So let's get started. Today we have a fun episode. We have our good friend back with us, former NFL player and president of Gallery Built Homes, Jason Starkey is here. And we also have Chad Lyncher and Adams Pritchard. And we're just going to kind of have a conversation about recovery and life and things, if y'all are good with that.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic.
How's everyone doing? We're all in here together like one big happy family.
We're all rested,
Yes.
fed,
Yeah.
sober.
We fit.
I feel like you did a great job with my introduction. That was awesome.
You know, the intros are the hardest part, so
That's
thank
what
you.
I hear
That means a
about
lot.
these. No, it's good.
Well, I guess to kind of kick things off, what I wanted to talk about today, or partly some today, is what y'all see or find the most challenging when helping others find the solution and go through this process, and whether that depends on external circumstances, the type of person, an athlete, not, that sort of thing. So yeah, whoever wants to jump in first, feel free.
All right, great question. For me lately, it's actually getting people to pull the trigger on going somewhere. Oftentimes I feel like in my world and life, the first natural step to do is send them to a safe place where they can receive, an adequate presentation of this 12-step program, and getting them to, buy into that, is proven difficult for me.
I've talked about on previous podcasts that at some point we got to move from logic and reason to you just are going to have to take some chances and trust. And I know that's kind of further down the road than what Jason's speaking to, but just getting a guy to just do this, it'll work out, and not continuing to lean on just what's safe and what's going to be in his head without consequence. The new guy always wants to go to, well, if I do this, this, and this, and this is going to happen. Well, how do you know? Have you ever done that?
Yeah.
Right.
He's like, no, but I'm a logical person, and that's what logic tells me. So I think for me, it's moving from that very surface level spot that we're in, I think early on, that it's just kind of all making sense. Like all these people are going to meetings and these people have sponsors. And so that makes sense. And doing these first few steps makes sense. But when it gets to the real tough stuff that really sets us free, getting them to have some faith and some trust in that.
Some buy-in, surrender.
Surrender. Surrender's probably.
Like they'll go as far as to walk across the room after, a meeting or a family member will contact me and be like, you need to help my kid or I need help. Like I was talking to a guy this week, I need help. What would that look like? And I tell him, this is what it would look like. Call me tomorrow. Let me know. You want to move forward or you don't, or you need more time. All three are acceptable answers. And he's like, I'm just not ready for that level of commitment. I really had no idea.
Yeah.
It's like I always call it negotiating their terms of surrender. It's just like either you're in or you're out.
Right.
Yeah. I've noticed a lot lately in the free world, like, Jason, what you're describing, like it's a lot easier in the bubble. And lately I've had like these 4 guys that I've been trying to work with, and it's the commitment to the process, because as well, I can't do this because I got to be here with my wife. I got to do this with the kids. I got to do this with the job. That stuff's more important. I got to do that. This is kind of on the back burner. And then, what happens every single time is like that stuff falls apart. And then hopefully they get to the spot where they're ready to do it. And then that stuff works out. But it's just hard to get somebody to trust that when they have no experience with it.
It's hard for me not to be abrasive because I want to be like, yeah, all those things are important. and you're failing miserably in all of them because of this disease that you may have that you might want to take a look at and kick the tires on. Like, in my experience is just like Adam said, like you make this the main thing right now, those things are going to actually work out to your benefit and the benefit of those that you're concerned about. Too.
Yeah. Well, in the book talks about an easier, softer way, because we think that's the delusion, that we think it's going to be an easier, softer way, not submitting to this process. But it actually is like the way harder, more awful way.
Yeah. And I like for just recently I was talking to this, to a family, and it was the wife, and and what was going on with her husband was pretty severe. I mean, he needed to be in a bubble and do all this, but like, no, with me and the kids, like he's got to do this outpatient stuff. Like that's all he can do. And I was like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? And like, get a call back this week. It didn't work, but they wasted all that time. It's just.
You both have a lot of experience talking to the family, and the little experience I have, it's just like they just don't understand either.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones trying to like keep it all together. And in most cases, like we're talking about men predominantly here because three of us work with a lot of men, but that typically is a provider. It's like, I don't know, like how are we going to pay the bills if he goes to, treatment or any of those things? To me, it was a part of my story. I don't try to pigeonhole everyone into it. I'm really a fan of what you guys are a part of and doing and impact. I think if anyone would do that, I think it's a gift to themselves and the family of origin. But getting people just to trust you. It's a lot of courage to ask someone for help, and you do, and then you try to give them help. It's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it needs to look like that.
Yes. Well, and I was talking to a woman a few weeks ago, and she was talking about how, like, people within the church and Christians just in that community, but all communities feel this, but they're like praying, like, please take this away. Please help me. Please take it away. And she's like, and it doesn't work. Like, why praying doesn't work? And I was like, well, is it possible that they're praying and then somebody shows up at their doorstep and they're like, hey, you need to go to treatment? And they're like, whoa, that is not what I was praying for, like.
Say it.
Yeah. And so, and I get it. I mean, I've talked about this before, but this idea of like rehab, like I would never, like, it's just like, it was such this just terrible thing and it's actually a very enjoyable experience in many places and much needed to be able to separate and get out of your world for a minute there to actually focus on some stuff or some internal work, I guess.
If there's some meat in that separation, if it is just separation and it's just a break, it is a complete waste of time and money. And unfortunately, that's most of what's out there now, just to be uncut.
Yeah, true. And I don't know how, you guys are Impact, right? And I'm not. I don't know how much I'm allowed to push that. But this is why I come to Birmingham. I love coming here to see what you guys are putting your hands on. I love the facility. I love where it's located. I love the message of depth and weight. I love how you don't hide from that. You're not doing all these just unnecessary billable hours because you have to, because of insurance. It's just like, I've been here, I think 3 times in the last 12 months. That's the reason, because I'm attracted to what you guys are doing and the movement that's taking place here in Birmingham. I'm really excited about that. And Chad, of course.
Yeah.
And I love being around my sponsor. You're right. And Chad, for sure. But no, it's just, we want desperately to give some, what we have to people. And we just can't. There has to be a level of wellness. And to your point, I'm in the faith-based community. I know we all are. A pastor's wife approached me Sunday after church. I hear you're working with so-and-so's husband. I hear you, and she's mentioning all the ones that aren't, they're the ones I'm talking about right now.
Yeah.
I need your help. Great. This is what that looks like. Oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
But we were praying this. I'm all, faith without works is dead. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm going to pray for intervention and you're going to get it, but it's not going to look possibly the way you thought it was going to look. And therefore you may not be awake to what it is.
Can I ask you a question real quick? I, on your talk you did a couple of days ago with Sarah, and you're talking about like people behind you on your platform, and I mean, I think that, you are in all of our platform, but I also want to ask you, like, before you met Chad, right? I've heard you talk before about like what your life in recovery was like up to that point. And like, it was good. It was decent. But then like you met Chad, had this completely new experience, and it changed the whole, the way you carry yourself, your trajectory. Like what was that like before and after, and what was it like? What happened in that, piece of work you did with Chad for the lights to come on?
It's a great question. It's a very important part of my recovery. I'm the product of 4 sponsors. When I celebrate my birthday, I call 4 individuals. Chad's the last one, and he's the one I've had the longest. But this period you're talking about was when my wife and I moved from Arizona to Texas. And it was a whole crazy experience because in Arizona, there's thousands of meetings in Phoenix, and I was a meeting making fool, and I loved it. I was on multiple committees. I had multiple home groups. I was serving my tail off. I was going to a lot of retreats and just fellowship. And then I moved to this place down in South Texas, and that wasn't my experience. I wasn't as connected to this mass audience, and I didn't get a sponsor. So I was 7 years sober, sponsoring myself because I didn't have a sponsor, and life was miserable. And Lark and I were contemplating divorce, and we were really having real conversation about what that would look like and where the kids would go. And, I was this football coach and chasing these, self-absorbed things and barely doing anything around recovery. And so I confessed all this misery to my close friend, Bubba. We all know Bubba. And Bubba just unashamedly, like, you need to call Chad. Like, you got to call this guy Chad. And Chad had been in a meeting I would go to. It was a dark meeting, and we call him candlelight, so I didn't really see him, but I'd hear him. So I'm like, oh, that's that bald dude, right? I said, call the bald guy, right? And at this time in my life, I got 7 years, and I think he had around 5.5 or 6, and he's got a little less time than me. And for whatever reason,
Did
maybe
that bother you at all?
I was hung up on it. I honestly was for a moment. But the pain was so great that I was willing to follow the suggestion given by Bubba to call my man Chad. And that began the process of a relationship where an adequate presentation of these 12 steps we refer to was given to me, and a life began to change. Didn't change overnight. I think Chad would agree, being a witness to kind of what I was walking through and the self-absorbedness that came back into my life through football and pursuing things for me instead of for others. But it gradually started to change. And from that fostered a relationship that is unlike any other I've had, but also direction. I mean, he's a guy I go to for counsel, but he's also a guy I go to have a lot of fun. One of the stories I tell the most is, I'm on the heels of another season where I worked 7 days a week, and I didn't go to any meetings, and I wasn't calling Chad, and I wasn't doing any work. And then now season's over, it's time to call Chad again, right? It was our first year together, and so I show up, all my work and ready to begin again, and he's just kind of like, hey man, do you have this book? And I'm like, yeah, I got it. I've read it. It saved my life. He goes, why are you only doing some of it? This isn't what I presented to you. I don't understand why you're trying to do this buffet style of recovery. Like, are you going to be all in? Because if you're not going to be all in, then I need to move on to someone else that is. Essentially, it was a tough love message that I absolutely needed to hear. But from that really started this trajectory, and it went all the way to 2020 and the work that we did in 2020 with a bunch of others, and how that impacted people all the way to California and Atlanta, Georgia, and United Kingdom. It's just been really cool. He's someone, I don't get hung up on time anymore with anybody. It really helped me overlook time. It's about quality. It's about depth. It's about weight. It's about recovered life. It's about the walk, not just the talk. And our boy Chad represents all that in my life.
Thank you.
I don't know if that answers the question, but that's...
I mean, the way I was thinking when you were answering that, a lot of people look at this like, oh, I have to do all this stuff. The way I look at it now is like, we get to do all this stuff and then experience the benefits of what it's like to be all in, which is just so much grander than just kind of doing the buffet style. And that's a drag, and that is kind of a grind. But, it's just like, man, so many people are missing that. Wow.
And what Chad represents in my life is one of a few people that I allow in my little tight circle that love me enough to tell me the truth. And as recent as last week, I get a phone call from him like, hey, man, I don't see you on our accountability text. Are you okay? I know you just had a procedure with your sinuses. Talk to me. I'm a little, and it's just like, he has no problem engaging in hard conversation around the health and well-being of people that, have entrusted him with this role in facilitating 12-step work. And because of that and that experience I've had, I've allowed other people in my life in that manner, which sharpens me.
Chad, how has Starkey impacted your life?
Oh, nobody brings me out of my shell more than Jason does. And so I always joke, he's always operating at least a 10 on the enthusiasm scale. It doesn't matter what we are doing. We could be picking up trash. He's like, this is amazing. And so he's always trying to get me a little more amped up. Like, I don't operate any higher than a 7, you know?
7's a high number. I would have said like a 4.
At a 4.
You wake up at a 2. We can get you to a 4 by lunch.
But he can get me to do anything, you know?
Get you to a 7?
He can get me to a 7. He'd probably be the one guy that could get me in the ocean.
Oh, wow. That's
we were talking about that last night, the ocean, and there was some other... But
getting off purchasing music.
Yeah. No, it's just, we're not the glum lot is what I think about when I get around, anybody that I'm close to in this walk, in this new life. Because when I got here, that's what I'd like to talk about. Like, I don't know about you guys. When I got here, one of my greatest fears was like, oh man, I'm 29 and I'm going to go to this quitting ceremony of, brainwashing, cult, righteous, judgmental. Like, I've been to church. I don't want to go. I'm 29. I got a lot of life ahead of me. Like really? Like, there's no way I can have fun in the absence of drugs and alcohol. Like, that's not even fathomable.
Right.
And yet I walk through it now. What I found is that was an absolute lie. I mean, what's your all's experience around living life and having a good time?
That was my experience for the 7 years that I was trying to find this. Was the only people that I watched were just abstinent from drugs and alcohol, and life that was so unattractive. And then I met people like y'all and was just like, what is going on? Like, they're glowing, they're loving life. And like, that's how I'm wired, and it's just too bad that's not all that's out there, because people would be fighting to do this stuff. But it's what's not out there. And it's why there's such a bad perception on all this. It's what we see in the mainstream. It's what we see in media, and so hopefully this right here like helps kind of break down that BS, let people see what this is really about, in going out there and being a light, not hiding from everything. What's the point in doing all this work to just go hide? We got to go be a part of life and be a light. And that's what people can't not witness God, witness this power coming through somebody when they're out there doing that. And that's what the world really needs to see.
And have fun doing it. Like, whether it be golfing or fishing or skiing or, it's just like, nobody has more fun than me.
It's true.
And I think it's an important message, not just to talk about, but like, be around.
Yeah.
It's because I'm a product of a locker room. Like, sarcasm was literally my first language when I got here. And I'm like, wait a second, I got to be stiff, bored, and glum. Like, I don't know how to, but that's not this world. It's not the one I'm in anyway.
I've been thinking about that a lot. Everybody knows I'm a homebody. There's nowhere I'd rather be than home. But I've been doing a lot of traveling, and all of us do. Like, seeing this world has become a really cool thing in sobriety.
Dude, Chad came to a concert with me a few months ago. No. Like, never in a million years. It was like, that's just, so I can't believe that. It's never any good. He loved it.
Next thing you're telling me, he's going to have a social media handle.
No.
In his picture will be him in the ocean.
Yeah, for context,
feeding a shark.
Chad lived at the beach for 10 years and did not get in the ocean. So that's what we're talking
I'm
about.
a product of Jaws.
Yeah, and we don't let him forget about it. And that's our responsibility as friends. Like, it's something we should bring up, like where you chose to sit in this podcast. Like, all those things matter,
Shark Week, if you're listening, put them in a tank.
Oh, great.
I have a question for y'all. It's the one question that came to mind. If your 22-year-old self could spend a day or a week with you, what do you think they'd be most shocked by? Just watching you operate.
I mean, when I was 22 years old, I was trying so hard to experience life. You know what I mean? But it was like I was a human trying to have this experience with life, and I did a ton of stuff all over the place.
You've always been a busybody,
right? But it never fit. It never checked the box, right? But if that 22-year-old version of myself could be inside me right now, I think it would just mind be blown of how incredible every single minute of every single day is, no matter what's going on around me. I mean, this morning I was driving around listening to music and just started crying. Like, felt like my whole body was just, but I mean, it's just like, life is amazing. And I missed that for so long, even though I was trying that was my intent, but it never happened until now.
So just your perception of
Just what a
just
beautiful
how you perceive the world and your gratitude and peace. How about y'all? That's great, Adam.
That is good.
At 22, like my alcoholism wasn't fully progressed.
All right, let's go 25.
Well, no, but even so, like it doesn't matter either way. Just if that person, the 22-year-old or even the 25-year-old that was really drinking a lot more at that point, like how that Sarah could see me today, that like I still can have fear, but I can move through it, and how I can do these hard things and have these hard conversations and be okay.
Would she be shocked to see you doing this right now?
Yes. No, I mean, you're talking about 22, and the first thing that comes to mind is when I was chugging Miller Lite at 9 a.m. before one of my presentations in college.
I did the same thing. I was drank before those.
Like, I mean, and today when I'm speaking in front of people and all these things, yes, I still get nervous. Like, it's just not a part of me, but I do it, and that's not of me. But it just goes to show, like, just how much my whole being has changed, and like I'm just so much healthier, like just the physical aspect of everything, and just more at peace, and have all these tools and this power in my life working to guide me through these things, even when I'm in doubt, even when I'm mad or whatever, and handling situations so completely differently than I handled them back then. And I think that my little 22-year-old self would be really proud.
I think so too.
Can we recognize what a great question that is? Well, first, you're like, I got one question. I'm like, one? Really? Way to be prepared, Chad. But I guess you're only going to come up with one. That was a good one. My 22-year-old self, you know what? Great answers too, by the way. I'd like to think, depending on, what part of the day he ran into me.
Let's say that he spent a week with you, like all day, got to see you in action.
I'd like to think he'd be inspired, and he'd gravitate towards me and want to be with me. Like, I don't think this would be a relationship he would avoid. I think he would recognize that it's all going to be okay, and that this too shall pass.
Would he be shocked by anything, though, do you think?
I was a dreamer when I was around that age. I mean, I was still playing college ball. I was transitioning in the NFL. I still had these high hopes in life, although it was masked with a lot of addiction and alcoholic tendencies. But, I don't think he'd be shocked. I think he'd be impressed.
Yeah.
Especially if he worked out with me. Like, if we're in the gym every night, my 22-year-old self, like, damn, dude, you're a dog. Like, I never did arms like this before. And then, we'd go to an H&I meeting. I'd like to think he'd just weep like,
yeah,
wow, Jason, I didn't know that you're going to live a life that looked like this. You're going to come to a state-funded detox center where the homeless people that you just saw under a bridge are, and you're going to cry, and you're going to share, and then we're going to go home. We're going to love on these kids. And that one boy that's living with us from Mexico, like, and then he's going to see me on the sidelines of a football game, losing my mind. He's like, I'm great. I didn't lose the passion for the game. Like, it's just.
Did you have that kind of vulnerability when you were younger? Because you are one of the more vulnerable people I know. You easily, you allow people in. You allow people to see who you are.
Yes, I've always had my emotions on my sleeve. I haven't been in tune with them. Haven't been awake to them. I would hide from them a lot. I would mask them. I would feel like they're inappropriate because I come from a family of people that don't do that. Well, Mom, I'm gonna give Mom a shout out. Mom taught me how to be sensitive, but everybody else was not.
And you have that dishonesty wrapped up in it. So it's real hard to be super transparent when you're.
Absolutely. When you're in the delusion, it's confusing. Your emotional maturity is extremely confusing, and not just at a young age, but when you're in active addiction and alcoholism, and you're watching insurance commercials and crying, you're like, I don't know what this is about. Where is this coming from?
Yeah.
But then when you're sober, crying at the same commercial, you're like, oh, thank you, God, that I'm in touch with, you in this way and vulnerable. And
well, and do you think, Jason, that being a coach has impacted the way you support guys through this process and recovery, or does that have anything to do?
I mean, you saw it. I had your kids like running the 40 in Chad's living room, right?
He does it with me.
Yeah.
Like, we're out and he's trying, I'm like, I'm ready to go home. And he's like, no, here's what's going to happen. All right.
I just think it's the presence of God and how my life has taken a full circle. As we talked before, I referenced a time in my life when my first resentment, the institution of football was on it. It was a multi-page literary piece about, and it started with F you, like I was out on it. And I went to this dark place for a few years early in recovery where I just didn't even want to consume it, watch it. I wanted to celebrate Chad because of who he was in my life. Pennington, that is, not this Chad. I didn't meet him yet. But then fast forward, I'm in real estate, I'm sober, we're doing well in Phoenix, and then we visit South Texas, and then God just stirs my heart, and he's like, I spoke to a football team for the first time. It was, teed up by a friend who had no idea that I was still angry. And then God just moved in my heart, and he stirred, and he's like, you need to move to South Texas, you need to move to Brownsville, you need to be this probationary teacher, you need to start coaching for a living. We took an 80% pay cut. The miracle that's my wife, that's like, when I got out of treatment, I had a $20 a week allowance, and I wasn't permitted to drive an automobile in this country. And then 4 years later, she's like, yeah, I'll follow you wherever you want to go. Let's go.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then he changed my heart around the whole thing. And then what it became was a platform, much like this podcast and in the recovery industry. It's just a place where I get to stand to touch others, for his glory and hopefully their benefit.
And Jason has a gift. That first question he asked me with more time to think about it, I love the enthusiasm that he, that's so contagious. But really, I think your greatest gift is, I don't care how long you've been sober. Everybody goes through periods where they kind of question their value in life. I don't do that when I'm around him. Like, nobody makes you feel more special than Jason Starkey does. And he does it with everybody. He's done it with the sound guys and the engineers here. Like, that's just who he is. Yeah. Like, if you're in a room with them, you're important. You're special. Everybody matters.
Yes.
Shout out to Dave and Nick. Thank you, Chad. Good job back there.
Well, yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, even when we were at dinner and just asking the waitress how her day's been or whatever, just being so nice at Little Betty. That was a good place in Birmingham if you guys haven't been.
Boom. Hanger.
Just a little drop. Just, it's newer, so it's great. But yeah, I mean, I from the few times that we've hung out, I can agree.
Yeah, I've been described at times as aloof, and I'm sure there's people in this world that are like, I'm not sure Chad likes me. Nobody thinks that about Jason. Like, if they met him, they're certain he likes him.
Yeah.
And the crazy irony of all that, thank you again, is and he knows, one of my character defects was like people pleasing. I really got into this rabbit hole about thinking about what you were thinking about me. And today I'm just at peace with whatever that is. It's none of my business. And I'm just okay being me.
Yeah.
Like, I found at some level my true and authentic self through going through the process of doing this work and getting in touch with the God of my understanding in a way that's meaningful. And now I just get to go live the world and kind of have fun doing it.
When you ask that question and listening to y'all's answers, I mean, it's like something I think a lot about. Like, I think there's a lot of incredible gifts that we have to be chosen to be alcoholics and drug addicts. And I think that one of the coolest things about, being a recovered alcoholic, recovered drug addict is that, like, we get to have our first life and experience, and then as it morphs into this, active addiction style, and it's kind of cool for a while, like this alternative lifestyle. And then, so that's like 1A, 1B, and then we get crushed, in 2 by this self-imposed crisis, have this surrender. And then 3, like we get to wake up, we get to go live this whole new recreated life. And like, how cool is, like, who wouldn't want to experience something like that?
I think that's what your 22-year-old self would be most shocked by. Seeing you at a festival, just losing your mind, like, hold on, I can't be sober here. This is not possible.
Right.
But you'd love to do all that stuff and do it with just as much excitement and enthusiasm as you always have.
I'd say it's even more now.
And I love that you shared recently, I don't know if it's in a podcast or a group, that those things that are so much fun on their own became about getting loaded.
Yeah.
They were no longer about being where you were.
Yeah, and so then that's what I'm talking about. So, like, we really do get to experience just life or whatever, being present, in the moment. And because the only thing that can, like, I mean, if you think about it, like, when drugs and alcohol are working, the only thing that can get me present is when I put that stuff in my body. But it starts to, like, not last as long anymore. And then I get wrapped up into other things. But then it's like we get to really plug up to some power that allows us to be right here, right now in this moment, and it doesn't matter what's going on around us. Like there's joy in every single moment, good, bad, whatever,
And we were talking about that just last night. Little context for the audience. Adams and I were in New York, went to Broadway. I picked the play. Adams didn't think it was good. Jason always accuses me of picking bad movies, which is completely false. I don't typically pick them. But I was pointing out, like, those experiences were amazing. We're still talking about them because they were
terrible.
Let's
just be honest. Yeah. There's nothing fancy about your ability to pick a bad movie.
And we went and saw a great play, but we've talked about the one that wasn't great more than we've talked about the great one. And we've never seen
Same with the movie we saw on Curveball, yes.
But it doesn't matter what's going on. It's just the time together. Bad meal, great meal. Bad movie, great movie. Bad trip, great trip. Like if you're with each other.
And sober and recovered and in tune with this spiritual way of life and therefore awake. I think we live in a world where most of its occupants are asleep, whether you're an addict or an alcoholic or not. Yeah. And we get to be the lucky ones that have been awakened in such a crazy way that it makes it fun. Now, you were talking about being under the influence and being at these concerts and these festivals, and just all be about the drug and that power. And it's not to go deep here for a minute, but I'm going to. It reminded me of a time where Larky and I were searching for this spirit, right? I always say I'm a recovered alcoholic. She's a recovered Catholic, right? So we're going to Mass in Phoenix. And I remember getting up from that pew multiple times and going to the bathroom to use my drug of choice. In this case, it was cocaine, just to try to tap into power. Like I'm in this proverbial house, right, where I could, if I was awake and recovered, tap into some power, but yet I'm in the bathroom trying to get loaded and missing it. And I smiled as I thought about that as you shared, because that same priest baptized both my kids. Recovered for decades. Didn't know that about him, right? And how cool that is. Like I'm in Father John's, parish, and I'm just sitting there getting loaded and I had no idea he's walking the walk I'm going to walk.
Yeah.
And just cool. I get to be present today. I don't have this urge to go to the bathroom. I'll actually hold it because I don't want to miss anything. I'm going to be here.
Well, that's hard. That's hard. I go to the bathroom a lot. But yeah, I have people come up to me now at these concerts, and I used to do this like when I'd be at them back in the day, and like, man, what is that guy? I need some of that. I literally have people come up to me sometimes now and like, hey man, what you got? I want some of whatever you're on.
Yeah,
it's God.
Yeah, I didn't want to hear that answer.
Yeah,
Sarah's getting ready to tee up another one for us. What's your question?
No. I was just thinking about how like we're all talking about this amazing life, and kind of going back to the first question of people. Maybe it being difficult to work with. And it's so ironic because it's like, why wouldn't you want this life? And it just reminds me of a few years ago, we had a speaker at our alumni event named Alec. And she was talking about, it's like fear is like this huge sheet. Like it is, 50 feet wide, 100 feet tall, but it's like paper thin. And all we have to do is just like, push through barely, but it's so big that we can't. And then once we get through, it's like it's so minuscule compared to what the world could be. And it just reminds me of that because same with me when I'm working with women, like they're just resistant in different areas because it's highly uncomfortable or inconvenient. And I'm like, this is nothing compared to what?
What's the scariest thing y'all have done in recovery?
Probably making some amends would be.
Yeah. That's the nice thing about amends is once you do those, it's like, I don't know if anything will be scarier than this.
Yeah.
But how about outside of any 12-step work? Just doing this podcast, can you think of anything that
to go
made
deep,
your knees buckle?
To go deep again, you guys know, Chad, like my dad passed away, it was a year ago in November. And, it was lung cancer, it was pulmonary fibrosis, and it was a process is what I'm trying to explain, where it wasn't a surprise, but it did turn quickly. And so leading up to that, invariably, I needed to jump on a flight last minute to get home for a time that was, undefined. And I was afraid. I really was. I was connected. I was reaching out to you. I was connected to others and God, but I was going to say goodbye, to Dad. And that was overwhelming. And then I get there and it's like, we've heard it, like you handle situations which would have normally baffled you. And the black sheep became the guy that was the caregiver. Like I got to bathe my father, which was awkward. And we laughed and it happened once. And he turned around and looked at me like the water was freezing. He's like, what are we doing? And I'm like, I don't know. This is weird, to like trying to order Chinese food and failing miserably. And he's lashing out. I mean, I put all this pressure on me. Like, what's the last words I'm going to say or hear? Like, what's this going to look like? And I'm trying to manipulate it, right? And then I get there and I just right where my feet are and I just get right into service and it just organically became 2 of the best weeks I've ever had. And as I left the day to go home, because my sober brother was coming to replace me, I'll never forget my father's invariable last words. He's like, hey, I'm at the door. I'm ready to go to catch a flight. He's like, we had a pretty good 2 weeks, didn't we? I'm like, yeah, Pops, it was great. He goes, I'd say it's probably the best we've ever had. I agree. He goes, you're a good son. Now, I had a flight booked. I'm coming back a week later for Thanksgiving. He was doing so well, I'm telling Lark, like, he's going to be here till Christmas. And as I'm driving to the airport, it hits me like, was that it?
Yeah.
And it was. What was probably one of the scariest moments in my recent life turned out to be one of the greatest gifts I've ever had in recovery.
Yeah.
When they told me your most satisfactory years were ahead of you, not behind you, I was like, that's not true for me. I just got done playing football.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was going to get to show up like that for that man at that time and season of his life in that way. And it was great.
Top that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we cut my answer?
I tell you, you talking about the most satisfactory years of our lives. I told this story a couple of times, but Chad and I were walking around New York City a couple of years ago, and there was a psychic, and I was like, oh, you want to go get your reading done? And he was like, why? I'm told the greatest years of my life lie ahead, and that's been my experience so far. I don't need anybody to tell me why.
I'm going to hold on to that. Coming. Give that power. I love that. That's really good. And you're right. And your imagination will be fired. And you guys are living that right now and everything you're putting your hands on.
It's hard to believe this is going to get better, but it's been our truth, all 4 of us.
Yeah. A lot of evidence to support it.
Yeah.
What about you, Chad?
I don't know. I thought about moving to South Texas was scary. Moving here was scary. Buying a house was terrifying. I wasn't making a ton of money, and that was most of my income when I did that. I don't know. Something probably hit me tonight, and I'll say, darn, I should have said that. But those are things that come to mind.
And the truth that hopefully the viewers are latching on to is we just don't struggle with fear as much as we used
that's
to.
What I've probably said this on here probably more than once, but I know people probably don't even believe this, but if none of us are even supposed to be here anymore, what the hell do we have to be afraid of? Talking about being in this part 3 of those 3 parts of life we were talking about, we're still here for some reason, for some purpose. So as long as we're supposed to be doing it, we're going to be breathing. So everything's already going to happen how it's supposed to. I can't mess it. It's like you were saying, what can I say? It's like that's the only time I think we can kind of get driven in fear is when we try to take the reins. You know what I mean? And so as long as you can just step back, be in line with this will, it's flowing through. Everything's happening right now exactly how it's supposed to in this moment, in this breath. But that's what we get to be awake to, I think. And the fear really can go away. And it can pop up a little bit here and there, but that's another reason it's a gift.
Typically never paralyzing, though.
Yeah.
I was in a meeting early on, and our buddy Ben, who we all know, he's brilliant, has a little flair for the dramatic, and sitting in a 12-step meeting, and Ben sharing, he says, look, y'all, if there really is a God, kind of leans in, gets a little quiet. If there really is a God, what's there to be afraid of? I'm like, whoa. That's deep. He's right, though. There really is a God, and all 4 of us believe there is. What are we afraid of?
I like it.
All right. So I guess we've all kind of talked about this a little bit on the podcast, and we talked about in this conversation about kind of the gifts that have come. But what does an average day in recovery look like for a recovered man?
Mine ends with evening review. I don't know about you guys.
And we're back. That was the text I got. I was like, hey, dude, like either you're participating or you're not. Like, all right, man, I'll write it. Mine starts with connecting. You know, I always talk about this divorce I request in the beginning of every one of my days. You know, I'm asking God to divorce me from me. Like, let me get out of your way today. Because my evidence and experience is when I'm able to successfully do that wholeheartedly, days stack up that are amazing. And the nightly review is not that intense on the top. It's more stream of life focused. But it's a life that's about serving others more than serving myself. I think the essence of what we do is feed others and serve others. And the more I do that, the more I get fed, the more I get fulfilled. And that becomes my purpose. And that looks different depending on what day we're talking about, whether it's a Sunday, where I'm struggling with patience because the wife's running late again, or whether it's a Monday and I'm not trying to tackle the world of the week in one morning on a Monday, and I'm allowing others to do the responsibilities that they've been tasked to do and not trying to do it for them or overstepping. It definitely involves H&I, and it definitely involves sharing this message, and whether that means I'm going to a meeting that day or whether that means I'm connecting with somebody in the work that day, or whether I'm just doing the disciplines.
Well, and I'd like to point out that you visiting, like you've gone and talked to the impact guys, and that's not like you're just doing that to be of service, and that's pretty cool.
Thank you, sir. I don't know if you know this about me yet. I like to talk, right? No, but I just do. Because I feel so good, especially when you have a room full of hungry people.
Yeah.
And right now, you guys are blessed with that room. I mean, that's what I took away from yesterday was,
sure.
They're starving for solution. And to the extent I was capable, I tried to share some of mine experiences with them around that. And that's really fulfilling. That's really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's so eloquently put. It all starts with connection. It ends with reflection, and what's in between. If this is no longer about me, it's about you. What am I going to pour out? And I think that's how I have really started to experience life. Therefore, that experience is different every single day. And how cool is that? It's not just like this punch in, punch out kind of grind. It's always something new. It's exciting.
I love that connection and reflection. I like that a lot. And then lastly, I just think there's this conscious contact with God that it's not often audible with me, but it's ongoing. It's organic. It's in my car. It's in the music. It's in the experiences I have around possibly content that I'm reviewing, emails I'm sending, relationships I'm engaged with. I mean, not to lift me up, but to lift him up. I'll be at a red light in Brownsville, homeless guy's right there. And I'm just led, not to give him $1, but like, hey, what's your name? Last one I did this to 2 weeks ago, his name was Nick. Nick, my name's Jason. I don't know if you're cool with this, but I like to pray because I too have been homeless. I don't know where you're at right now. I'm not trying to assume anything, but man, can I pray for you? And then he leans in the truck, and then, what I'm saying? It's just like, when I'm there, like I drive away, I'm like, thank you, God. That was cool. Like it's all downhill from here.
Yeah.
Not because I empathize or not because I sympathize or it's just like that connection, like God, as you do unto the least of these, you do unto me. Like I'm all about trying to serve him, and through serving others. And when those days, which are few for me, happen, I'm just like, and then I won't tell anybody. Like you, apart from my daughter, she has a real heart for homeless people, which I think is awesome. She likes to make bag lunches and let's go around and hand them out.
Aww.
And so I'll go home and share that with Kendall. Hey, I prayed with a guy named Nick today. He was at that corner of Boca Chica in the frontage road. Under the bridge? Oh, yeah. That's awesome, Dad.
That is so cool.
This mic sometimes is not so awesome.
Chad, what about you? Average day in recovery.
I do things a little differently. Adams Pritchard is a busybody. Does more in one day than I do all week. Jason, too, busy all the time, on the go. I typically do not have a day that does not include a nap, although I was forced to yesterday. I move a little slower, but I make sure everything that's important gets done. I do wake up and start my day with God, and I end my day with God, and I try to be real intentional with the things that I do. As of late, And this is kind of an interesting dynamic with the three of us because Jason was my food buddy in Texas and Adams has been my food buddy in Birmingham. And I think all four of us are very active now, and it has made a world of difference in my life. I know it has in yours, but there was a time where, we were very slothful, and certainly a time where we were in Texas, and Jason would come over, had that golf simulator in the house, and he'd bring my whole pantry upstairs with him. And that's just, we kind of bonded through that. Now Absolutely. We're all kind of bonding through exercise and getting fit, and it's a lot more fun. It's made a world of difference in my life.
Yeah, some healthy decisions at dinner last night, even though I got judged for my no bun and no cheese, but that's all right.
It wasn't judgment. It was the fact that you should have just ordered a steak.
I know. Yeah, but that's what's so great about this is we all have different personalities and like to go at faster paces or slower paces, but regardless, the person will find their way if they do this. And I think that's pretty neat.
Ric Flair stories, like it all came out last night, But I think what makes this dynamic work, and when I say this, I'm talking about the people in my life that make me happy, make me laugh, make me cry, make me safe. It's just like, if I can't laugh at me, right, then I'm not very funny. And I think we do a great job of laughing at ourselves, right? I mean, we're first to point, like you didn't eat any bread on your burger, but that didn't stop you from eating all the bread before the meal got there, right? But I'm down with it, right? And, and the Ric Flair stories and the Chad movie selections and Broadway, it's like, if we can't laugh at ourselves, like, what are we doing here, And that's just back to like the life that we choose to live is one of joy and purpose that has value and meaning. And I think that's why a lot of people are, attracted to some of us, all of us, whatever that looks like. I think that's why it happens.
The other part, and I don't think we've talked about this, is the relationship with authenticity. Like loving who you are. I mean, I'm never trying to be Adams or trying to be Jason or trying to be Sarah. Like I know who I am. I know my lane, and I'm not trying to do it any differently. And you guys aren't either. There's not a whole lot of jealousy that comes up in this life. You've received the blessings you've received for whatever reason. I've received the blessings I've received, and I'm just going to keep being Chad to the best of my ability, and y'all do the same thing.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and I remember it was probably one of the first times I got asked to tell my story, and I'm talking to my sponsor. I'm like, I need to, like, what did you say here? What did you say there? And she's like, we don't need another Lindsay. we need Sarah. We don't need another Lindsay. Just be you. Like, if you're your authentic self and speak from your heart, that's what they need. And so, yeah.
Terry M. from Arizona, when I did my first speaking engagement a long time ago, I was like, what do I do? He said, Jason, do two things. Tell the truth and don't suck. And ever since then, I've attempted to do both, But, to your point, I think about we can't transmit something that we don't have, And this world is asleep, and this world's full of posing. Like it's all over social media. Posturing, posing, the next great filter and how I'm perceived or looked is really important to a lot of audiences. And I think what's really attractive to me about our world in recovery, and it's a small world within the recovery world, is just those people in touch with their true and authentic self. They're just okay with who they are. The identity crisis has, taken place, and this is who I am, and I'm okay with that. I couldn't love Larky until I learned how to love me. And I couldn't be, a good husband until I learned how to have a good intimate relationship with a man. Like that was kind of the natural order of things for me in relationships, to really learn how to be transparent and vulnerable with a man, let down all of my vulnerabilities. And that allowed me to go there with my wife because I was posturing a lot at home, and I was afraid to tell her how afraid I was. And I didn't have everything figured out. And that's why I gravitate towards people like you guys, because I feel like you live a life that looks like that.
That's how we get to trust God.
Well, anybody have anything else they want to add before we wrap up? And
I feel like we could do this all day.
Yeah.
But they do charge us by the hour here, so we can't do that. But I don't know. 12-step work, to me, is about the 12th step. Like that's the destination. I think that we all try to get that person that we talked about that may be hard to get in the door at first, but ultimately that's That's the objective, to have a spiritual awakening as a result of doing this 12-step work, right? And then as a result of that, the mission becomes sharing it with others. 12-step calls, do you guys have any experiences around that? Like helping the next person, do you have a story around that? Do you have a God shot around that? Any encouragement you want to give to someone that's just struggling to walk in the door?
Yeah, well, I'll share a quick one. Just more on kind of going with that intuition, that sixth sense that the book talks about, that will get connected. And so after I had my second son, it's, with a newborn, it's very hard to go to meetings and be doing, the typical routine that I had known for so long. And so with my second, I knew kind of what to expect. Well, it was the first day that I had an opportunity to go to a meeting, and it was one that I'd never been to before. I looked it up online, and I was choosing between two, and I was like, this one's closer. I'll just go to this one. I don't know what it is. And I sit down, and then there's a woman next to me that, raises her hand that she's new. And afterwards, she, everybody comes up and talks to her and And I was like, when I left, I gave her my number and stuff, but when I left, I was like, oh gosh, I hope she didn't feel ambushed by, everybody coming up to her and and I was like, I really, in my head, selfishly, I'm like, I want to help her,
Good for you.
And then I was like, but she's probably not going to call because there were 5 other girls talking to her. And then, yeah, she called me and she was like, I just felt like I resonated most with you. And I was like, good. I felt like I connected with you too. And that was, Will's 3. She's still sober. And that, it doesn't always work out that way, right? But how amazing. And not to say I'm the reason, but I so believe that God lined those things up because I can help somebody that you can't help, and you can help somebody that I can't help. And so we all need to be in the place where we're supposed to be in the right time. So.
I think the important point that you made there is the willingness doesn't stop when you get sober. If anything, it enhances. And I often reflect on the truth that was revealed to me in work we did in 2020. But how I was convicted, I was working a program of convenience rather than a program of inconvenience. I could have been in that same situation, but ran out to my next appointment.
Yeah.
You leaned in. And I think a lot of times, often people in our fellowship don't do that. I wasn't doing that until I kind of saw that truth about myself. So good for you to lean in and work a program of inconvenience and put yourself out there, because it's still scary. Even when you've been sober a while, it's they may reject me. They may pick somebody else. They may not even call.
Right.
All those things may happen, but you'll never know unless you reach out the hand.
Yes. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, the willingness, because it's not even it just happens automatically now. Even if I don't want to be inconvenienced, or I don't necessarily want to do it, it's almost like I'm on autopilot and I just do anyway. And I think it's because I just have so much experience with how it works out. It's just this is just a part of my way of life. Same thing as going to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym. I'm going to go most of the time.
I think you start to have a relationship with discomfort where we just avoided it at all costs. You're like, hold on, this is a little uncomfortable. Let's lean in and see what's going on with this.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. It's like you said, the work is 12, the work is service. And my life depends on that. So if that's the reality, I need to be fighting to go try to help every single person I can. And just like Sarah was talking about, it's not me that's going to help them. They're going to, that's where God can show up. And that, just like me, see y'all, I'm attracted to that. I want that. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't really get to experience what it's like to go fight, to go help people. Chad makes fun. I do it all the time. I'll go talk to people that already have somebody they're working with, but I know it sucks. And I'm like, hey, man, tell me a little bit about what you're doing. And then they're like, well, what can I do with you? And it's like shooting fish in a barrel, Yeah. I kind of enjoy that almost more than just a regular old-fashioned one.
I think you like the hunt.
Yeah.
And kind of landing the plane over here where I was kind of starting is when I do have a prospect in my life and I really want them to come to impact, in my mind, I'm if you only knew what I know, not only about the place you're going to, but the people that you're going to be exposed to and the adequate presentation you're going to receive. If you would just go, but I think in my experience, the truth of this life that we're all talking about for the viewers that you have is, recovery is not for people who want it. It's not for people who need it. It's for people that do it. You know, this life too could be yours in your own unique and special way. If you want what I got, do what I do. And that starts with letting go and surrendering to the fact that maybe you don't have all the answers, Jason, in this region of recovery and getting sober and staying sober. And then being totally removed from that, that's not even an option anymore. I loved how you guys spoke about that in your podcast. But just like, this isn't for the people that want it or need it. Unfortunately, it's for only the ones willing to do it. And so you can pray your tail off on Sunday. Take your butt to do something right after that prayer.
Right.
Faith without works, it's dead.
Yes. Okay. All
Perfect.
Right. Good. And then, all right. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. This was really fun. And Jason, thank you again for joining us.
Honored to be
Means
here.
A lot.
Proud of you guys.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in to another episode. I hope today's conversation has inspired you, opened your mind, maybe even your heart. But remember, you're not alone. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow us on social. We'll have all the links in the description below. But until then, keep making an impact. Bye, y'all.